I was 12 years old when I realized that school was no longer a fit for me. And it was also the time where I made a decision that ended up changing the rest of my life. I would like to guide all of you through the process of what it was to discover that school was no longer a fit for me and how I came to realize several truths about what education actually is and how we can see it as a mechanism to boost our own areas of opportunities, abilities, as well as our personal talents. First, you need to have a little bit some context. I was just 12 years old when I approached my parents with the idea and the clear sentence that I no longer wished to attend school. And of course they were shocked. Of course they reacted in the worst way possible at first. Why? Because most of our abilities are meant to think one way. And of course that we associate schools with the traditional standard idea that you need to be in front of a classroom taught by many people and how you need to pretty much excel at that in order to have a good successful life. And it was also a bit of a shock for my parents because I had always loved school, and up to that point, I had been someone that excelled at it too. I never got anything less than a 90 in a test. And all of that my parents ever got from my teachers were letters of recommendation about how I was a pleasure to have in class and how I was smart, obedient, and at the same time how I was a student that was sure to succeed. But I would like to guide you all through the beginning. It was my first year of middle school, and all of a sudden I came to realize that the goals that I have for my future were quite ambitious. I have known which college I want to attend since I was just 8 years old. So, of course, that middle school was the first stepping stone. And my first disappointment came when I realized something about what the traditional school system looks like, and I would like to guide all of you through that. So think about our common conceptions of school. We think of a teacher and a room full of children that are following their lead, and how they're pretty much in task of letting everyone know what they should be learning and what rhythm they should have based on the overall performance of the group. Now look at this picture from the 1950s. This is a classroom full of children, and up to that point, I don't think that none of them were actually keen on, what the school had to come. School as we commonly know it comes from the Industrial Revolution and about how we no longer dependent on a lot of workforce and instead we introduce the idea of education. Now take a look at this photo of the common 21st century conception of what a school classroom would look like. And you can actually see that nothing has changed pretty much, and how our system has pretty much not evolved from the 1950s to 2022. Or well, I will get to that part later as addressing why the pandemic was a big chance of opportunities for people like me, the ones that actually decided to no longer attend school. Okay, so as you can see, we are too dependent on the idea that we need a teacher and a classroom and a room full of children to actually develop as a group. I also used to benefit from this since I am a very social person myself and I benefit a lot from this social interaction. But at the same time, I wish that all of you realize that this is a stepping stone towards what we think of education, because it was developed by Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Jean Piaget, as we most commonly refer to the normal pedagogian system. Now, look at these two images again, and please tell me how much of it we can actually improve and what they actually aim or why the model has remained that way. Well, I would like to explain my personal experiences with a group of 3 people. First, you have the bottom people in that classroom, the ones that are learning as quickly as everyone else and that are doing their best to run after their peers and catch up with schoolwork, and that maybe their learning abilities are a little bit behind due to other external factors that not often are really related to school's conception of itself. Then we have the endless middle, the students that excel at everything they do because they are actually great at following the normal speed limit that the school teacher dictates that it should be. And then we have another type of problem because there are students that are ahead of those 2 groups, but that at the same time have more similarities to the ones that lag behind than to the general majority of the group. I was one of those children. one of those children that learned a bit faster, that asked the more questions in class, and that was always raising her hand when she knew something. And of course that sometimes my teacher asked me to have a little bit more of empathy with my peers, and I respected that choice, but at the same time I felt that it was pulling me back. Because how can you effectively say to a 12-year-old that maybe their learning ability needs to be toned down a little bit in order for everyone else to catch up? Now that I come to realize, it seems that we are at a great disadvantage due to the simple fact that we are expected to learn at the rhythm that everybody else does. And what that does is pretty much putting a step to what you can actually achieve with your own talents. And I was pretty much displeased by this idea, so much that I started to explore other initiatives. As a Mexico City resident, I came to realize that there were not many options as well as innovative education models that involve not the idea of a school. And that's when I came to know about how homeschool actually works. Here is a shared data of how many homeschool students have actually changed and grown since the beginning of the 1970s. And as you can see, well, I'm using the US as a comparison since I live in a Western country. But I would like to say that this chart has only gone up ever since the COVID pandemic that has affected the entire world. Of course that I was shocked to learn that there were many people that rejected the idea of normal traditional school and that actually took matters into their own hands. And that's when I discovered that I was one of those people that may be benefited from this, apart from many other reasons that could be religious as well as personal and health related too. So I finally chose a school method that could work for me, and I recompiled all of this info in order to present it to my parents. They were of course shocked because they were worried about the lack of social interaction, about how I would no longer be able to intervene with my friends, and about how maybe I was going to slack off because there wasn't going to be a tutor behind me. But then I actually tried to research models and I came to find one that I like very much. I am talking about the classical method of education, which in terms sounds very antique and maybe a little bit archaic for some, but it was the one that ended up fitting my abilities best. It is a method that is pretty much based on language arts and that depends a lot on how we conceive the general education by itself, splitting it up into core sections of learning. I am talking about logic, grammar, and rhetoric. And they are seen as stages in order for an individual to learn. Therefore, I was taking subjects like classical logic, grammatic, language arts, and on top of my normal school curriculum at the age of just 13 years old, as well as taking Latin and Greek classes, because it is boosted on the idea that language is an essential way to learn. And also by taking the initiative of the Charlotte Mason method, which is alive learning. And what this pretty much proposes is that you actually need to approach knowledge as it is, and how as the ones that are transmitting it to you intended to be. That way, my schoolwork finally not consisted of dozens of work adapted for my age and for antique work. And it finally started being something that I was excited to learn and that I knew was going to give me lots of advantages into the future. Finally, when I approached my parents with all of this information packed, I told them that I finally didn't want to go to school anymore. And gladfully, after reading all of my points and after discovering that there was nothing wrong with what I was doing in school, they accepted. Now it's been a long 5 years since that first happened. I am 16 years old now and I am about to head off to college. And I can tell you that there are a lot of parents in doubt about whether homeschool or another type of alternative school learning is rightful for their child, as we have just come out of very difficult situations. What I can say to you is that right now, homeschool was the first tool in my equipment that helped me build my future and that is advancing me towards all of the goals that I dreamed of as a child. I am just 16 years old and I am one step away from entering 2 of my top college majors, here in Mexico that are ranked as one of the top schools in the entire country. I am talking about Centro de Investigación y Docencias Económicas y el Colegio de México. And I was already admitted to Instituto Tecnológico de Estudios Superiores Monterrey, also known as el TEC, and Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de México, also known as ITAM. I would like to end this talk by addressing that I am of course a very privileged person for being able to approach this type of different education, as well as to receive the quality learning that I had. But at the same time, I would like to tell all of you that it was only a small part of my entire development. And I would like to tell all of you that there aren't actually limits to what you can do with your own education. And once you have identified exactly what you can do and what you actually wish to do, there is nothing that's actually stopping you other than the mental barriers that you may come to put yourself at. Homeschool was the right decision for me, and I hope it is the right decision for so many others that are only just exploring this new idea of learning. And I would like to thank all of you for your kind listen.